Gemini-cli is an open-source AI agent that brings Google's Gemini models into your terminal. Think of it like ChatGPT that runs right inside Kali Linux for automation, code generation, ethical hacking tasks, and command line workflows. Think of Gemini-cli as ChatGPT plus terminal plus automation, all combined. Now, before we jump into Gemini-cli, let's understand how normal Kali Linux usage looks like. Example scenario. For example, you forget Nmap flags. You're unsure about Metasploit modules. You want to write a quick Bash or Python script. You always need an external reference. This is where Gemini-cli changes everything. Today, we're starting Kali Linux inside a virtual machine to explore how artificial intelligence can enhance everyday cybersecurity work. Kali Linux is a widely used operating system for penetration testing, digital forensics, and security research, packed with hundreds of powerful tools. Traditionally, while working in Kali Linux, we rely on documentation, blogs, and search engines to understand commands, tools, and errors. This constant switching between the terminal and the browser slows down productivity and breaks our focus. To solve this problem, we're integrating Gemini-cli, an AI-powered command line assistant from Google, directly into the Kali Linux terminal. In this video, we'll see how Gemini-cli transforms Kali Linux into an intelligent AI-assisted security platform. Now that Kali Linux is ready, let's move on to the practical part. We'll start the installation process and see how Gemini-cli works inside the Kali Linux terminal. Let's open the terminal and begin. First, we'll switch to the root user to avoid permission issues during installation. I'm using the sudo su command and entering the password. Once we have root access, we can continue with the setup. Before installing any new tool on Kali Linux, it's important to update the system. This step ensures that the package manager has the latest information from all configured repositories. By running sudo apt update, Kali Linux refreshes its package index and checks for available updates. This process does not install or upgrade packages, but it prepares the system for smooth and error-free installations. Updating the package list also helps avoid dependency conflicts, version mismatches, and broken installations. During this process, Kali Linux securely connects to its official repositories and verifies package metadata. You may see multiple repositories being checked, which is completely normal. Once this update process finishes successfully, our system will be fully prepared for installing Gemini-cli and its required dependencies. After this step, we can confidently move forward with the practical installation. First, I'll clear the terminal to keep things clean and easy to follow. Now let's check whether Gemini-cli is already available on this system. As you can see, Gemini-cli is not installed yet, and Kali suggests installing it directly from the repository. I'll confirm the installation and run the sudo apt install gemini-cli command. This will attempt to download and install Gemini-cli along with its required dependencies. Now, let's check Gemini-cli by running the gemini-cli command in the terminal. Since I've already used Gemini-cli on this system, it opens directly without any prompts. If you're running Gemini-cli for the first time, you'll be asked to authenticate using your Google account. This authentication step allows Gemini-cli to securely connect with Google's AI services. Once the login is completed, Gemini-cli will be ready to use directly from the Kali Linux terminal. Now let's look at a real-world practical example using Gemini-cli inside Kali Linux. In this demo, I'm asking Gemini-cli to use Nmap to identify open ports on the website try2ascend.com. Instead of manually typing complex Nmap commands, I can simply describe what I want to do in plain language. Gemini-cli understands the request and prepares the appropriate Nmap scan automatically. Before executing the scan, Gemini-cli asks for confirmation to allow command execution. This step is very important because it ensures transparency and prevents any command from running without user approval. I'll press Enter to allow the execution and proceed with the scan. Once permission is granted, Gemini-cli runs the Nmap command in the background. Now we can see the scan results appearing on the screen, showing the open ports detected on the target. These results help us understand which services are accessible and which ports are exposed. Gemini-cli not only executes the scan, but also assists in understanding the output, which is especially helpful for beginners. This approach saves time, reduces errors, and improves efficiency during reconnaissance. Always remember to perform scans only on systems you own or have permission to test. This example clearly shows how Gemini-cli makes Kali Linux more intelligent, interactive, and user-friendly for security testing. Now let's move on to a slightly more advanced practical example using Gemini-cli. In this demonstration, I'm asking Gemini-cli to use Nmap to scan the domain adso.com and save the scan results into a text file in the current directory. Instead of manually writing the Nmap command with output options, I'm simply describing the task in natural language. Gemini-cli interprets the request and prepares the appropriate Nmap command automatically. Before executing the scan, Gemini-cli asks for permission to run the required commands. This confirmation step is important as it ensures full user control over what gets executed on the system. Here, I'm selecting the option to allow all executions and pressing Enter to continue. You may notice multiple permission prompts during this process. This happens because Gemini-cli may execute more than one command as part of the workflow. I'll continue selecting Yes to All and pressing Enter to allow the execution to proceed smoothly. Once permissions are granted, Gemini-cli starts running the Nmap scan against the target. At the same time, it saves the scan output into a text file in the same directory. This allows us to easily review, share, or analyze the results later without rerunning the scan. Now we can see the scan results appearing, showing the open ports and detected services for the target. Saving results to a file is very useful during reconnaissance and reporting phases. As always, make sure you perform scans only on systems you own or have explicit permission to test. This example clearly shows how Gemini-cli simplifies command execution, automation, and output handling inside Kali Linux. Now I'll open a new terminal window to verify the scan results we saved earlier. First, I'll switch to the root user to avoid any permission issues. Next, I'll navigate to the directory where Gemini-cli saved the Nmap output file. Before opening the file, I'll list the contents of the directory using the ls command. This allows us to confirm that the scan result file is present. Now that we've verified the file, I'll use the cat command to open it and review the output. Here we can see the scan results that were generated during the Nmap scan. This confirms that the results were successfully saved and are ready for further analysis or reporting. Now that we've reviewed the saved scan results, I'll close this terminal window and move back to the Gemini-cli terminal. Here, we'll try another reconnaissance example using a different tool. This time, I'm asking Gemini-cli to use the harvester to gather information related to the domain nalarobotics.com. The harvester is commonly used for collecting publicly available data such as subdomains, emails, and other open-source intelligence. As before, Gemini-cli asks for confirmation before executing the required commands. I'll allow execution and select the option to allow all, then press Enter to continue. Once permission is granted, Gemini-cli starts running the harvester scan in the background. At this point, the scan results are displayed on the screen. As we can see, no results are found for this particular domain. This does not necessarily mean there is an error or a problem with the tool. In many cases, it simply means that the target domain has limited publicly available information, or the data sources queried by the harvester did not return results. The tool itself is working correctly, but the outcome depends entirely on the visibility of the target on public sources. To stop the current process and exit the Gemini-cli session, I'll press Ctrl+C. I'll press Ctrl+C once more to fully exit and return to the normal terminal prompt. So in this video, we saw how to integrate Gemini-CLI directly into Kali Linux and use AI to simplify real-world security tasks. We explored how Gemini-CLI works, installed it step by step, and used tools like Nmap and the Harvester through natural language commands. We also looked at saving scan results, reviewing them from the terminal, and understanding why some scans may not return results. This shows how Gemini-CLI can make Kali Linux more powerful, efficient, and beginner-friendly without losing control or security. If you found this video useful, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more cybersecurity and practical tutorials. Also, don't forget to check out my SIEM and GRC playlists on the channel if you want to learn more about security monitoring, compliance, and real-world enterprise security concepts. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.